So, man, let's hop into our All-Star predictions. And,
Yeah.
this is interesting just because of the season we're at. And, Steph Curry has been, gone. And now he's back, and he certainly the league has changed, and we're in this kind of weird season in terms of games being postponed because of the pandemic. So maybe these stats are skewed, maybe they're not. And I just want to kind of share the NBA.com's West starters is so weird because the website's putting out this. It represents the NBA. It's kind of like, I don't know, a little bit biased. I don't know. They have writers on their
Mhm.
site, but I just found it a little bit strange. But I kind of want to read you these starters and get your opinions, and then we can kind of discuss our starters as well. We'll
Mhm.
do the reserves next week. So for the West, and this is NBA.com, this is Sean Powell writing this. He has LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, Kawhi Leonard, Damian Lillard, and Luka Doncic. And then on the East, he has Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kevin Durant, Joel Embiid, Bradley Beal, and Jalen Brown.
Mm.
So for me, I think my difference, I feel kind of rotten doing this, but Steph Curry is just the best shooter in the game right now. And just looking at their stats, I mean, and looking at the standings, it is so close. I mean, look at Steph. If you compare Steph and Damian Lillard, and I love Damian Lillard too. I mean, it breaks my heart. It's like kind of picking like which kid you love the most. I mean, it's just weird. But looking at the standings so far, the Golden State Warriors, they're 11-9, which I think it's a surprise. I think people, I don't know if people were necessarily thinking they're going to be that much of a factor. And with
Mhm. I
Portland,
wasn't. Yeah.
they are 10-8. So you could say, are they a disappointment? What's the deal here? And then looking at these stats, Damian Lillard has a slight points. I mean, he has the better stats besides rebounds. I mean, Dame is almost averaging 30 points with 29.6. You have Steph Curry at 27.7, 6 assists. I think just because of the surprise factor and how much he means to his team in terms of measuring, okay, how is this team performing compared to their expectations? I go with Steph.
Hmm.
It's really close. I think other than that, I really like Luca. I think with the others, I don't. In terms of guards, I don't necessarily think they're too much of a factor here. And I think you bring up a good point, Matt, earlier in terms of just going through all these guards in the Western Conference. I agree with you. The East is much tougher to pick because now we're in this weird situation with like a Kyrie Irving, like in the East, which we'll get to a second. Like he's just been inactive, but obviously he's an All Star. Just how,
Oh yeah.
despite how we feel about him.
Hmm.
So it's tough to. I mean, you can't give it to him just based on when he's out, but at the same time, if you just go on play, of course. So it's just that's where it's an iffy situation compared to the West. The competition is not so much there. So Matt, I just want to get to your West starters.
Yeah.
What's your opinion? You said you had a tougher time with the East. Why did you think the West was easier in your mind?
Well, for one thing, so my list isn't what I necessarily think will happen. Let me
Okay,
clarify that.
sure,
This is my list, and my list, I definitely weighted in to make the picks a little bit easier because it is
sure.
tough. I weighted in also how is this team performing, and as we'll talk about next week for the reserves, it also factors into how many players you have earned on this all-star squad. So like if you're a losing team, you have two guys doing all the work. I'm looking at you, Washington Wizards.
Yeah.
You're not going to get two all-stars in my book. So
No,
teaser
agreed.
for that. Um, but in the West, with Curry and Dame Lillard, I said, why not both for my
Oh,
starters? I like both of them in there. I know this likely isn't going to happen because Luca is putting up 27, 9, and 9. That's amazing. People love Luca, rightfully so.
and
He's
the fan
one of
vote. Yeah.
yeah, and he's one of the best watches in the NBA.
Yeah,
But for me, we talked about earlier how the Mavericks have lost five
for sure.
straight.
I get it.
So he is absolutely an all-star. I'm not questioning that at all. He is in my all-star reserves, but he is not a starter. And interesting, I just wanted to mention Curry and Dame Lillard are on the same narrative trajectory this year. They both have squads that are dealing with major injuries, especially multiple injuries if you look at Portland.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know about Clay on the Warriors. So there's kind of a similar narrative there in that these are guys that are carrying their teams to winning records in the traditionally more deep and competitive West. So for my book, and with the numbers that they are putting up, I mean, 27, 5, and 6 for Curry, 29, 4, and 7 for Dame, that warrants starting for both of them. Okay, moving forward from that, LeBron is a starter. It's going to happen. He maybe doesn't have the gigantic numbers, but it's still 25, 7, 7. And they are, well, I guess the Jazz are the best team in the West at the time of this recording, but the
Correct.
Lakers are the overwhelming favorite, and they are a top
Yeah.
three team in the West. So LeBron gets a spot in my book. Kawhi Leonard, because I do need to give a tip of the cap to the Clippers, and Kawhi has pretty decent numbers there as well, 25, 5, and 5. And again, that is a top three team in the West right now. For center, I don't think this is arguable, but it could be Anthony Davis sneaks in with the fan vote and Denver being a smaller market. My opinion, Jokic should be that starting center. 25, 11, and 8 is his averages on the season. And Denver has worked their way back up. I believe they are the fourth seed right now
Correct.
at the moment in the
Yes.
West. So,
Mm-hmm.
so that's my starting five. I guess it differs greatly with the other list that you mentioned. But there's going to be a lot of stuff, especially next week when we get into the reserves. That's going to be some really,
It's gonna be
really tough
tough.
decisions. Yeah.
Yeah.
What
For
are
sure.
what is your starting five? How does yours differ from mine?
I have basically I have Steph, Luca. I don't know.
It's tough.
It's
It's
tough.
his
I
numbers
really
are
like.
amazing.
I just think the guy's game is pretty sensational.
I
I have
agree.
LeBron. I think he's the MVP candidate. I have Kawhi and I have Nikolai Jokic. I just think with the Joker, especially the Nuggets, they were just floundering, and it's so weird because you look at the standings here, it is bizarre. Like just looking at
Yeah.
it's without trying to curse. It's weird. Like you look at so the
Hmm.
Nuggets are 11-8, right, and then you have Memphis at 8-6, and the Suns are 10-8, and the Portland Trailblazers are 10-8. The Warriors are 11-9, so like they're the eighth seed. I mean, but they have the same amount of wins as the Nuggets do, and have
Hmm.
one more loss, and yet they're the eighth seed. Along then with the Spurs, the Rockets. The Rockets are very underrated. I think they have a great team.
Hmm. I agree.
They they're going to be a factor. I know we're kind of veering off from All Star, but I guess my point is with Luca, I don't think it's such a massive disparity in terms of the Mavericks. Yeah, they've been a disappointment, but
Hmm.
the way this season's so weird, when going forward to really 13, I would say four through 14th. Honestly, with the Pelicans, I mean they're 7-11. I mean that's not
It's
too
true.
far out. It's I would say performance. Unless you're the Timberwolves, like you're a disgrace. That's 4-14. Clearly, you're a bad team with that record.
Mavericks
So
are 8-12. Is that right?
yes, correct.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
they're
It's not
right.
terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would. So it makes me feel better keeping Luca in that top five, but I get it. Just swapping him out and just having Dame and Steph Curry starting together, that totally makes sense. But I think, like you said, the fan vote, I just think he's super popular. And I think that's what's going to be interesting because, Damian Lillard's popular, Steph's popular, and so is Luca. So it's like, that's where it's just going to get tough, like you said, with the reserves. Like, it's always brutal at guard. It's always the case, and I think this year's no different.
Well, and to fight against my own point about Dame Lillard,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still going to keep my list. I'm not going
Sure.
to waver on this,
Yeah.
um, but you Luca has a case to say. Matt, you're arguing that Dame Lillard and Steph Curry are carrying these teams. Look what I'm doing on the Mavs 24/7.
That's true.
I don't
That's
have
true.
the option of a third great player on my team at this
Yeah.
point in time.
Sure.
So I think that's totally fair. As these lists tend to do, we're kind of splitting hairs between two phenomenal players. Hey, thanks for checking out Hoopsology. If you had any thoughts on the topic we just discussed, we'd love to hear them in the comments section below. If you liked the video, please consider liking and sharing the video. It really helps us out. We appreciate it, and we will see you guys for the next video.